Hi, and welcome to my channel. Or if you're a returning subscriber, hi again. It's so nice to see you back here for another video. My name's Tess Lark, and today I'm going to show you how you can use epoxy resin and alcohol ink to create beautiful lacing cells with resin. As always, I'll have all the materials that I use for this project linked in the description below. So if anybody is interested in trying this project for themselves, all of that information will be down there for you. And I am so excited about today's project, so let's just hop right into it. To start this project, I went ahead and I mixed up 60 milliliters of resin, and I'm using a 2-part epoxy resin, so I'm using equal parts of both the epoxy resin and the hardener. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start to mix that up, making sure that I'm scraping both the sides and the bottom of my container as I go. And you wanna mix your resin until there's no more striations in it and it's pretty clear. Make sure that you check the manufacturer's instructions for the specific resin that you're using, but typically I mix for about 5 minutes. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit that with my heat gun before moving on. My next step will be to tape off the back of this cutting board to try to keep some resin off of it, and so I'm just making some smaller pieces with tape just to get around that hole. And then next I'm going to use 4 small cups to elevate the board so it's off of my working surface, just in case any resin spills over the sides. And I don't need to tell you, I'm sure, but make sure that you're using wax paper or silicone mats down on your desk or working surface just so you don't get resin on your desk. Here I'm portioning out some of my clear resin into some smaller cups so I can mix up some colors. And I will need mostly this Baja blue and turquoise with just a little bit of white, and I'm also reserving just a little bit of clear resin. So for the blue, I'm using Pinata Colors alcohol ink, it's their Baja blue, and I'm just adding a couple drops of the Blanco Blanco white by Pinata Colors as well. I'm going to go ahead and give that a good mix and make sure that all of that pigment is really well incorporated. To my second cup, I'm adding a few drops of turquoise by Let's Resin along with a couple more drops of that Baja blue. And then for my third, I'm just adding a little bit of this Blanco Blanco white. And just a quick reminder to give this video a like if you're liking it so far. It helps out my channel a whole lot, and it also lets me know I'm making content that you want to see from me. And next I'm going to begin to layer my colors, starting with the blue, and I'm going to put that right around the bottom edge of my cutting board. And I'm not taking it all the way up to the edges because I know that it's going to start spreading out. Resin is pretty viscous, so it does take a little bit for it to kind of settle where it's going to be. Also later when I use the heat gun and I start warming up the resin, it's going to get a little bit more fluid and liquidy, so I'm just going to add enough blue here, but not too much that it completely starts dripping over the sides. But I will take a popsicle stick and just sort of get closer to those edges there, as close as I can get without pushing it over. After I've got that layer of blue down, I'm going to add just a small layer of that turquoise right on top of it. And then to that I'm going to add a very small layer of clear resin before I add my white resin. And you want to add the clear resin first because it just helps to make some really nice, lovely cells. So going in with just a thin line of my white resin, and then I'm going to go ahead and begin to heat up the resin using my heat gun. And I'm going to heat up the entire project just to get all of that resin nice and warm. And once it gets nice and warm, it gets a lot more fluid and easier to push. So then once I start seeing a little bit of movement in the resin, I'm going to go ahead and push out my first wave. Also, on a side note, if you guys are curious about how I filmed this tutorial, I do have a video up, so make sure that you check that out after you watch this one. So I let that first layer of resin cure completely, and now we're gonna go ahead and repeat that process and add one more wave to this piece. So starting out with the blue, and I want this second wave to essentially start where the first one ends. So I'm taking that blue pretty far up the board, and then using my popsicle stick again just to kind of fill out some of those empty spaces. And again, because the resin's so viscous, it does take a while for it to settle, and I don't want to have to do too much sanding when this piece is cured completely. So I'm trying not to put too much resin on it because I don't want it to go all the way over the sides. But after I've got my blue nice and smoothed out, I'm gonna add another layer of that turquoise right on top of the blue. Oh, also when I mixed up my second batch of resin, I just mixed up 40 milliliters instead of 60 because I needed a little bit less. So then on top of that turquoise goes another layer of our clear resin, And then after that, I'll add a layer of the white. And I just feel like this is the perfect time to tell you, or remind you rather, that you should subscribe to my channel because I do post weekly art tutorial videos. So now that I've got my second layer of resin on this piece, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun on the higher setting and pop some of those air bubbles, warm up that resin, and get it ready to push it out to make it into another beach wave. And again, all the materials I use and equipment that I use for this project will be linked in the description down below. So if you're curious what resin I'm using, the heat gun, all of that stuff will be down there. And I do think it's okay to go over your wave once or twice, but you don't want to work it too much or you'll start losing the cells that you're creating. And just a little bit of craftception because your girl needs to feed the gram. And you can find me there under the same name if you're interested. But then I'm just gonna go ahead and hit these corners a little bit more with some of my blue, and then I'll allow this piece to set up and cure completely, typically for about 24 hours. Alright, so I let the board set up overnight. It's totally cured, and let's just pull the tape off of the back. Some of that resin did sort of seep through to the other side, so our next step is going to be to sand this down. And whenever you're sanding resin, you do want to make sure you're wearing eye protection and a mask because you don't want to aspirate any of those little particles that you create while you're sanding. So I've got my sander here and I've just laid my piece down flat on my desk with a towel beneath it just to kind of collect any of that dust and those particles. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sand this piece down, going pretty much primarily in the direction of the wood grain, but I'll go both directions as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and sand that down until it's nice and smooth. Alright guys, so our piece is all finished up and I think it's looking so beautiful. I think we got some really beautiful lacing cells. I also really love that you can kind of see a little bit of this layer of green lacing underneath the white as well. And as always, I'll make sure to take some shots in the natural light so you guys can see what it looks like. Overall, I think that this piece turned out super, super cute and I'm so curious to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I will go ahead and list a couple of these cutting boards or serving boards in my Etsy shop, which is fragilebangs.com. Go on and check it out. It's a great way for you to support me, my art, and this channel. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending a part of your day with me, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you did make it all the way to the end of this video, leave me some sort of beach theme emoji so that I know that it's real. I really hope that this video inspires you to make something of your own today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!